Leslie, thank you for your phone call today. I'm going to attempt to make some videos now that go through the process that I use when I'm concepting a new idea for a book and the step-by-step process that I use, which I'm still developing by the way, to create good content that flows, that gets to the core of what people need to read and how to make it all come together in your mind and then get it on paper. Some of this, honestly, I've just figured it out on my own over the years, and then other pieces of the information I'm going to give you are things that I'm now studying in copywriting, which has helped me in an intense way to fine tune how I'm doing things and to improve even further with each book that I write, to make things a little more engaging, a little more compelling for the reader, and also to structure things a little bit better. And hopefully, because I'm now becoming more educated in this topic, I can give the information to you and you can hit the ground running, while achieving things that have taken me a lot longer to learn how to achieve over time. I'll also make a video tutorial showing you, when you've written your book, how exactly to get it onto Amazon, publish it, and then even market it to the people around you so that you can build a brand and start getting your writing out there for people to read, for the people who really need to read it to read. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing that happens to me when I decide I want to write a book is I am exposed to something, I'm having a conversation with someone, or something comes up in my mind and it triggers an idea. So this part has obviously already happened with you because you've been thinking about things that you want to write. And yeah, once you have a solid idea in your head, I really want you to get rid of all the rest of the noise that's going on in your mind about what you want to write about, and I want you to hone in on one idea. Once you've got that idea in your mind, I want you to really make it clear. So say I want to write about pregnancy. What do you want to write about pregnancy? Do you want to write a week-by-week guide about pregnancy? Do you want to write a guide about happiness during pregnancy, which is one that I wrote recently? Or in your case, maybe you want to talk about how to handle trauma after an assault, or just really hone in on what exactly is the topic that you want to get into. Do you know what it is? Buy a notepad, write it down. So at the moment I'm writing a lead magnet. I'll tell you what they are if you don't already know a bit later, about copywriting. So I'm writing a book that is all about writing copy to persuade people with words. So write down in 1 to 3 words what it is as a heading, and then write down in one sentence what it's going to be about underneath the heading. So a heading, what it is, and a sentence describing what it is underneath. Now the next thing I want you to do, and this can be really helpful when you have an idea but you haven't really fleshed out the entirety of the idea yet, is once you have your heading and subheading written down, I want you to go onto Google or go onto Amazon or wherever it is, and I want you to look up other pieces of information about what your book is going to be about. Now this can mean buying books, but it can also just mean looking at articles, looking at peer-reviewed studies, any kind of information that you can find out there, that not necessarily to give you the information to put in your book, you can use it for that, but also to give you ideas on what structure and what topics within your topic are going to be helpful things that you can include inside your book. So for example, at the moment I'm writing a week-by-week pregnancy guide, and I might already have it in my head that I want to describe each week and describe what it feels like, what physical symptoms are going on with you, what's happening with your baby inside your belly. But then when I jump online and look at other articles that talk about week-by-week pregnancy experiences, I might find other topics that I haven't thought of that I might want to include in my book. And those could be things like morning sickness, they could be prenatal depression, they could be talking about towards the end of the pregnancy losing your mucus plug, or lots of these little things that as just one person I might not think of myself, but by looking at other articles and looking at other books I can see other subtopics that I can include within my book to make it more comprehensive. An important thing to remember at this stage is none of this stuff is structured yet. So you have written down a heading, you've written down a subheading, but they probably won't be the heading and subheadings that you end up going with by the time you publish your book. And that doesn't matter. At this point, we just want a heading, a subheading, and some ideas about what we're going to include in our book. So you've been scouring Google and you've been looking at different topics and ideas within your the topic of your book. And what I want you to do next is write them down. So I've written down here for my week by week guide. I knew that I was going to write about each week, what to expect emotionally, physiologically, and physically. But now I also know from going on Google and looking at different articles, different books, and what they include, that I can also talk about baby's development, announcing your pregnancy, relationship issues, birth plans, changes to your body, prenatal depression, labor, birth, losing your mucus plug. And this is just the beginning. I'm going to continue looking on Google and I'm going to find as many different subtopics within the topic I'd like to discuss to include in my book. And again, we're just throwing this stuff down on paper. It doesn't need to be in order. It doesn't need to be in sequence. We're literally just getting as comprehensive a list as we can of the things that we want to include within this topic that we're going to discuss in our book. Now, once you have your list and you're sure that you have everything that you want to include in your book, the next step is to put it into order. So you need to look at your list of ideas and put it into the sequential chronological order that you believe it should go into to flow through for the reader from one topic to the next in a way that's going to make sense to them. So this is always going to start with an introduction and a my story, and we'll get into that soon. And it's always going to end with a call to action. So that makes it really easy. You always just start with writing down introduction, my story, call to action, and then we're just filling in the pieces in between. And so for a week by week guide, that would be, week 1, and then subheadings, physical symptoms, and then, maybe emotional symptoms, blah, blah, blah. What's going on with your baby, like baby's development inside the womb. And then you might bring up morning sickness, because at this point in your pregnancy, actually that would come after week 4, but you know what I mean, like you'd go week 1 through to week 4, and then you'd bring up morning sickness, because morning sickness would make sense at this point in the pregnancy. And then later in the pregnancy, down towards the end of the book, towards the end of the pregnancy, we'd be looking at labor, preparing for labor, and then week 38, and then birth. And up here, planning a midwife or doula, or planning your obstetrician appointments. And then week, 18. But obviously, I don't know if that's exactly right. I haven't actually planned this book out yet, but you see what I mean. We're putting it into a chronological order that makes sense for the reader who would be experiencing the topic in this order, and reading through in a way that makes sense to them for their experience. So once you've written down your sequential scaffolding for your book, then the rest of writing the book actually becomes a lot easier, because each section is now broken into an exact topic that you want to talk about, and you really just need to be filling in the gaps. See how by breaking it down this way, writing a book goes from being this monstrous, huge thing that you have to get through to becoming more of a step-by-step process that you've already laid out for yourself, and it becomes super easy, barely an inconvenience. Now we need to talk about making your book compelling and engaging for your reader. So this is where my study as a copywriter is coming into play, and it's actually super interesting. So I don't know if you know this, but when people are reading any kind of text, generally you have the first sentence to gather their attention. Every single thing that you write has to have a purpose to keep their attention, and it needs to be engaging and written in a language that they would speak in order to keep them interested in reading your book. Okay, so the most immediately important thing when factoring this into your book is your headline and your cover. Your headline needs to be extremely short, concise, to the point, and it needs to tell the reader of the book exactly why they would want to read your book. So whatever you decide your headline is going to be, you need to think about who's going to be reading this book. What's their age? What's their gender? What are their interests? How do they speak? What do they need? And most importantly, what language will capture their attention, and how is that going to translate to your very short and concise headline? And the beauty of books is you get to write a headline, but then you also get to write a subheadline. A subheadline can be used to further explain and further capture your audience once you've already got their attention with the headline. We're going to use this example, we're going to use these principles of knowing your target audience, knowing your target market throughout the entire book. But it is most important in your headline, in your cover image, in your subheadline, and in your introduction. And that is simply because the first introduction to your book that anyone pays attention to is going to determine for them very, very quickly whether or not they're interested in your book, whether or not they want to read more of what you have to say, and whether or not you have value to offer them with your words. Keep in mind, we live in a world that is so oversaturated with information and content that people are paying less and less and less attention to things until they are captured or compelled by them. So if there is any chance that your headline is not going to speak the message that they need to hear, or is not going to convey to them exactly what they need from your book, they're going to go straight past it to something else. So knowing that you are as wise as you are, and the amount of information and wonderful things that you have to say to people, it's going to be very important for you to get this right. And I believe in you. I think you absolutely can. Okay, so writing a good introduction is very much along the same principles as writing a good heading. We want to know our audience, but we're really in the introduction going to hone in on what our audience needs from reading about this topic. So, what is the issue that the audience is dealing with? What are the pain points of the audience? What are they struggling with? We're going to talk about these issues in the introduction, and we're going to frame it in a way that speaks exactly to what they're struggling with and what they need help with. Once we've covered what the issue, the pain points, and the struggle is within the topic we're writing about in the introduction, we're going to then talk about what does this book cover and how does it help them? How does this book solve their problems? Next, in the introduction, we're going to outline an overview of the topics ahead that are going to be discussed in this book. So we remember beforehand, we laid out a plan for what topics they are and put them into chronological order. And on the third point down in the introduction, we're going to talk about what we're going to cover ahead and give a basic overview of how that's going to flow. Next, when we've covered the overview of what's coming ahead, we need to tell the reader why they would listen to you in particular. And that brings me to the next point that we're going to write about, and that's your story. So in your story, within the introduction, you're going to tell them how you're an authority on the subject and why it would be important to listen to you, and why your words matter. You're going to talk a little bit about your personal journey. You're going to talk a lot about your experiences within the topic, what you've learned over the years within those experiences, and what credentials you can bring to the table as well to show people that you're not just some random that's written a book to talk about a topic, but you're someone who's studied the subject. You're someone who's spent decades within the field working with real people who have dealt with these problems, and you're someone who has helped people through those problems in the past, help them to the other side, and that's exactly what you're trying to do now within your book for the reader. Finally, before you hit the bulk of the book, which will be each topic in chronological order, you're going to have a call to action. So, a call to action is a great way to market your brand as a writer, to expand your readership, and to build a community. So what you're going to do is you're going to thank people for choosing your book, and you're going to ask them if they enjoy the content ahead to please come and follow you on your social network and join the community, join the conversation, subscribe to your email list, all of these things that we'll get to as you expand on your writing. And we need to do this in one next step for the reader. So rather than saying, okay, so you've enjoyed this book, please follow me on my Facebook. Oh, and also come and check out my email list. Oh, and also come to this and also do that. You're just going to give them one next step. So you're going to have one place to click where people can come, or to type into Google, where people can come to connect with you in whatever capacity you want that to be, and to build that community of people who love to read what you have and who will follow your future books. Finally, it's time to write. So you're just going to go ahead from one topic to the next with the same kind of formula that you would use with any kind of written work: introduction, body, conclusion. And you're going to cover each topic step by step until you have a complete and full book. As always, we end books with a nice conclusion that wraps up the entirety of the content. Another call to action, always put another call to action at the end of the book with the same request, and then you will have yourself a full book. So you've written your first draft, honest to God, take a break, go do something that you enjoy, take a few days off or even a week. And then you're going to come back to the book and you're going to go through it again. We're going to do editing at that point. We're going to look through, make sure it reads through well. And if you find that you, in your second draft, can introduce more of that personality and that language that speaks in the same language that your reader would speak in, then definitely add that in at that point. Once you have a complete manuscript and you've done your own self-editing and you've popped in all the personality that you can in the target market language, then this would be the time to hire an editor to go through and fix up all your grammatical problems, all your spelling errors, all of that stuff that we can't do for ourselves when we're too far into it. Personally, I can't afford an editor yet, so I ask my friends to look over my work, and I get feedback from people who read my book, and I use that way because, at the end of the day, you got to start somewhere. And yeah, you will have yourself a first book at this point and a full formula to continue on and continue publishing as many times as you like. I hope this has been helpful. Let me know if there's anything that I didn't cover or that confused you. This is my first time. Yeah, this is my first time filming. It's super rough. I really just threw it together because I would love to see you publish. I think you have so much to say and so much value to give. But it's also been great for me because I can take this first video draft and work on getting things a little clearer, work on what I'm doing, and hopefully start releasing video tutorials to the public down the track. Thanks, Leslie. I'll chat to you soon, okay? Let me know when you get this. Bye!